Good morning. As I always start the classes by saying, I think it's really unbelievable that you chose to start your day, continue your mornings learning about Eress Yisrael. So this is a topic that it's possible you've never heard of in your entire life. If you have, then great, it'll be a reinforcement. So I'm really looking forward to speaking about it. Let me share my screen with you. Oh, yeah, I have to open it. Oh, here. Okay, I'm going to show you two pictures and I'm going to ask you what feelings come up when looking at the pictures. Okay, here is picture number one. And here is picture number two. So now I'm going to go back to the first one. I know when I look at this, a few things that strike me is one, how colorful it is and beautiful. And this is in Israel, although it's hard to picture something like this in Israel. It doesn't even look like it belongs. I also noticed how it's so perfect. There's nothing out of place. This reddish over here are rocks. There's not one rock on the path. Everything is perfectly manicured gardens, very peaceful, beautiful. You can also notice the sea in the background. This is the Mediterranean Sea. And it looks like a place I would love to visit. And it is a place I have visited. A few years ago, I was a counselor in a summer program called iLead, and the program took us to a place called the Bahai Gardens. This is what you're looking at, and what Bahai means and why gardens, all that is we're going to talk about today. And when I saw the gardens, I thought that they were the most beautiful gardens I'd ever seen in my entire life. And I couldn't believe I never even heard about them or saw them until the program took me. If you've never been to them in Israel, I highly, highly, highly recommend putting it on top of your list because it's just so beautiful. Everyone could enjoy. And even if you have little kids, you could play games with them. We're going to see that there's a lot of themes that repeat themselves in the garden, playing with the kids. How many stars could you find? How many circle bushes could you find? There's a lot of ways to make it fun for kids. And it's just so beautiful. And it's a fantastic place. And what we're going to talk about today is what is the backstory of the Bahai faith. So just like we have Judaism, Christianity, Islam, tons of religions, the Bahai is another religion. There's about 7 million Baha'is in the world, but until I visited there with the program, I never even heard of them. We're going to talk about what are the main principles of this religion and where can we find them in Israel. And the higher goal is going to be how can we, I can't see what the word says, how can learning about the Bahai strengthen our own way of life? Because something I want you to keep in mind as we learn about them is what similarities are there between the Bahai and Judaism. And always, every time I learn anything in my life, I always ask myself what it means to me as a Jewish person, as a human being, how could it enrich my life? I think that's one of the purposes of what we're supposed to do with our learning. So the Bahai religion was founded in Iran in the 1800s, which is not that long ago. And we have, you see on the left there, it says Bab. The Bab, it's Arabic for gate or door. And there was a man named the Bab, and he started preaching, and he said, I am predicting that there's going to be a man that's going to be born, similar to you have Muhammad, Moshe, in Christianity, Jesus. So similar to that, there's going to be a man born, and he is going to bring a new way of life. And just wait and see, he's going to come and bring this new way of life. Now, in the 1800s, the Ottoman Empire was in charge, and they're Muslim, and they're hearing what the Bab is saying, and how dare he preach something new, and he gained a lot of followers, and it was kind of vague because it didn't yet happen. He said, just wait, there's going to be this revelation. And what they eventually did to the Bab is they had him banished from Iran and killed. So that's what you get for spreading ideas. And eventually, the new person that's going to reveal came about. His name is the Baha'u'llah. And the Baha'u'llah, he spent 40 years writing books and scrolls about the revelations that he got from God. And he also did not have a peaceful life. anyone, especially back then, it really makes me appreciate how today people say what they want. There's such an exchange of ideas, and usually you're not tortured and exiled and thrown into jail, because depending on what country you live in. And he had followed a similar path to the Bab, and he was banished from Iran, and then he gets to another country and he's banished there too. And eventually he was put in Israel in the Akko prison. So another place to visit when you go to Israel. This is a completely separate story. So he's a prisoner in Akko, and that's where he spent the rest of his life. However, towards the last 10 years of his life, the people there, they realized, hey, this is a really great guy, and they made conditions better for him, and they showed respect and affection, and they let him leave the confines of the jail. He died at the age of 75, and this was after 40 years of imprisonment, torture, and exile. So he did not have an easy life. So that is the backstory of the Bahai religion. Now, the Baha'u'llah, he was buried in Akko, and over here, this building that you see, also really beautiful. You see the same red rocks on the side. This is a shrine, and this is where he was buried. Akko is the holiest site in the Bahai religion. Similar to the way we pray facing Yerushalayim, they pray facing Akko, because that's where the Baha'u'llah is buried. If the concept of taking pilgrimages to the holiest sites, so the Bahai would go to Akko. And how did it end up in Israel? And not a surprise, probably. All the religions come to Israel. So how do we get to the Bahai Gardens? So there are two locations. One is in Akko. You see circled on top. It's about 2 hour and 15-minute drive from Jerusalem. So if you do want to visit it, I recommend staying up north for a day. So I think you really need 2 days in Akko, because there's so much to do there. And there's another location, the location which is the administrative center of the Bahai, which is also gorgeous, and that's the picture we opened with. I'm gonna show you again. That is in Haifa over here. So they're only 25 minutes away, Akko and Haifa, two locations in Israel of the Bahai Gardens. What is the Bahai faith? It's a monotheistic faith. It does not negate any other religion. Now, they're relatively late religion. They came in the 1800s, but they don't say, we are the new religion and let's get rid of everything else that came before us. They appreciate the truth and the values that all the other religions brought. They say they all come from the same source, as depicted by these arrows. You have the same source and all the religions are coming. And what they profess is they say we have a new message for the modern age. We're modern people. And what is their message? So in a line that humankind is one, and that humanity must be united, and we have to overcome the barriers. Unity is their most important thing. That's what they're all about. And some of the principles of their religion reflect that idea that they have. So there's equality between men and women. There's no social hierarchy. There's no high priest or anything like that. And they say if we work together in peace and harmony, we can solve the problems of the world. So that's a very big belief of theirs. They encourage marriage between men and women because they say that's the basis of a properly functioning society. And their view on parenting, they say parents are supposed to see the education of their kids. And every individual should develop his talents and learn a trade and profession. And it's also expected that a Bahai will contribute part of their earnings to the temples and the centers. So how do they worship God? They worship God very simply through prayer and meditation. And we're going to talk about what it's like to go into a Bahai temple or Bahai center, what it looks like. And they have daily recitation, one of 3 special prayers, and everyone does it in private. And when I learned about that, so I thought of Judaism, how I think Judaism has the best of both worlds, because we have tefillot that we say privately between us and God. But then we also have the concept of a minyan and tefillot that we say out loud, and think of the power. I always go to Ne'ilah and Yom Kippur, how powerful it is when you have all the tefillot coming together. So that's something that they don't have in the Bahai religion, because it's a very individual kind of thing. So Judaism does have that. And now if we're looking at the gardens again, I want to talk a little bit about why gardens, because usually when we think of a religion, maybe in Judaism we think of a shul, in Christianity a church, Muslim a mosque, but the first thing that I said was not the Bahai temple, it was the Bahai gardens. Every single temple that they have, so they have them on 10 different continents, they have gardens surrounding it. And the reason why they have the gardens is because they think it's a really very fitting, you're going to approach this holy site. Now, in Israel, they're not temples, they're shrines. One in Akka, it's the shrine where the Baha'u'llah is buried. And here you see this golden dome over here. This is in Haifa. The Bab is buried here and his son. So they believe that if someone's approaching a holy site, that if they have gardens as they approach, it's very tranquil and it gives them time to think as they get to it. And also very interesting that I saw, if you want to make a wall and want to make a divider, but you want to divide something off. So one way you could build a high wall that separates, and another way you could do it through gardening, because gardening also creates barriers and it's much softer and nicer. And this reminded me of something. I was in the Hebrew University campus in Givat Ram a year ago, and they have there these buildings that are very, very, very old. And old, what characterizes them, it looks like a bunker and there's not a lot of windows. It's like these concrete slabs. And how do you get people to want to work there? Because who wants to work in a place like that? I mean, they could knock it and rebuild it. The campus, it has the college classes and it also has offices for different companies. So one of the ways that they did is around this area of these like ugly buildings, they invested tons of money in gardening and putting nice fountains and flowers. And all of a sudden you build a garden and it makes everything so much better. So the Bahai believe that too, and they have gardens surrounding all their shrines or temples. And there's something about as you get closer, the silence is growing in intensity. This over here are the gardens in Haifa. And we're looking at it from on top, and you look all the way down towards the temple with the beautiful sea in the background. And there's 19 terraces, and you slowly walk your way down. Now, going to the Bahai Gardens, another great reason why you should add it to your itinerary is because it's free. You don't have to pay anything. And they don't even accept donations because only Bahai can donate to these places. And you could just walk around yourself and enjoy the gardens because it's magnificent. Or you could actually, if you sign up in advance, you could get a tour from one of the Bahai, and I'm sure they add even more about the experience. It's just a wonderful place to go. Now you could go inside because it's not considered avodah zarah. You don't have to. You could just stay outside of the gardens. And inside, if we go back to the ideas we said earlier about it, the prayer and meditation being important, we walk inside this building, similar to a church and a mosque. There's no pictures on the wall. Well, shows today kind of have pictures, but not of people. There's no icons or images. It's simple, and they want to make the environment one where you can contemplate. There's no singing inside. There's no sermons. And if you want to like chant out loud, what's done is you read. It's all individual, reading from the holy writings, which could be from the writings of the Baha'u'llah, or it could be from any religion, because they respect all religions. The temples, the shrines is open to everyone. Everyone could go and visit, and it's quiet experience. It's pretty quiet inside. The other things I want to point out about the gardens, that two numbers that are important in the Baha'i religion are the numbers 9 and 19. The reason why 9 is because they say that's the highest number you could get. That's a single digit, so it represents unity. And these stars over here have 8 points. 8's also significant. I don't remember why, but they have stars that have 9 points. And earlier in the presentation, I showed you this star has 9 points because that is holy in the religion, and the number 19 as well. Now remember 19. Another way that they worship God, they have these devotional gatherings. So I typed into Google devotional gatherings, and this picture came up of actual Baha'i people. Now you see, based on the way that they're dressed, that there's no differentiation between in dress. They look like regular people, men, women, all together. So that's another way that they worship God. Diet. So there are no dietary restrictions. They can eat everything. However, alcohol and drugs are forbidden unless prescribed by a doctor, because they say if you're taking alcohol and drugs, then you're not in control of your mind, and you want to be in control so you can communicate with God and humanity and peace. I said to remember the number 19. So the Bahai have 19 months in their calendar year, and each month has 19 days. So wow, right? Not everyone. We know the Jewish calendar is different, the Muslim calendar is different. So now we have another calendar, the Bahai, they have 19 months. And if you look what's written over here, each month has a different value that they focus on. Speech, questions, honor, sovereignty, dominion. Now, if you do the math, 19 times 19 is not 365. There are unaccounted days. So if they do, between the 18th and the 19th month, they add 4 days, 4 or 5 days a year. So that's also a fun fact about the Baha'i religion. Where are the Baha'is? So I mentioned earlier that there are about 7 million. They're all over the world. Every continent, almost every continent has a Baha'i temple. And there's certain principles about the temple, and the way they know how to construct it is from the Baha'u'llah. He was the one that gave them all the writings. One of the features, so this one is actually in Chicago, not in Chicago, it's in a place called Wilmette. It's a few miles north of Chicago. And if anyone is near Chicago and would like to visit, this is a huge center. And notice how there's a lot of similar features. You have the circles. Circles are also very important to them. We're going to talk about that more in a second. The gardens, and each temple has 9 entrances. We said 9 is important to them. You could get to them from any side, and you go in, and there's a room, there's chairs, you sit and contemplate, meditate, pray. So this one is in the United States. The biggest Baha'i community today is in India. So this is actually called the Lotus Temple. And it's fitting also, I think, that it should be in India. That's what I would think if I had to guess somewhere. So this is a temple, and I mentioned earlier, anyone from any religion could go inside and experience. They're open to all. I mentioned circles. So this is it looks different because it's different lighting, but this is the temple that's in Illinois. And notice all the circle fountains around it. Circumambulation is a concept where the Bahai, they go around the temple before they go in. They go around a few times because they believe that circling something is an expression of humility, submissiveness, and adoration. So that's one of the things that they do. Also, another really nice idea that they have, if you think of a planet in space, so it has satellites sometimes or different moons that orbit it, but it's all connected by the center force. So the same thing, we're all going around something, but we're all connected by one central force. And I also tried to think if Judaism has any of this. And then I thought of Hakafot on Sukkot, they were also going around something. So we also have the concept of going around. That's another thing in their religion. Now just some fun technical facts. There in the gardens, there are over 400, at least the ones in Israel, there are over 450 species of plants, 90 local workers, gardening ideas incorporated from all different cultures. And I just love the perfection of it. Like this, sometimes perfection could annoy you, but this perfection of it is just, I find it so calming and peaceful. And this is only a picture. Imagine what it looks like in real life. The expenses are covered by volunteers, and it's free to visit the gardens I already mentioned. Now, is there a Baha'i community in Israel? We said they're all over the world. So there is no Baha'i community in Israel. It's actually illegal. Illegal by who? Illegal by the Baha'u'llah. He instructed his followers not to spread his teachings in the Holy Land. And when the religion was developing, if there were people that were living in the Holy Land, they were encouraged to go somewhere else. And it's ironic because the Bab is buried in Haifa and the Baha'u'llah is buried in Akko. And the Baha'u'llah, he said he didn't want his teaching spread in Israel, but he decided that he wanted the administrative center to be on top of Har Carmel. So I don't have the map over here. I want to take a minute to talk about Har Carmel. If you are visiting the Bahai gardens in Haifa, well, in Akko, you could drive 20 minutes and then get to Har Carmel. So if you're going to sit and learn about different religions, one of the beautiful things about Haifa is it has so many displays of all the religions. One of the main things that's known that happened there, we have the Carmel mountain range, and the famous story in Sefer Melachim between Eliyahu and the Nevi'im of the Baal. So the Jewish people at that time, they worshipped Avodah Zarah. They worshipped something called the Baal. And Eliyahu, he has this great showdown. It's on the mountain. He invites all the priests for the idol worship, and he tells Bnei Yisrael, you need to pick. You can't do both. You can't go after God and the Baal. And the reason why Bnei Yisrael did both, I explained it in a different Zoom, that the way it developed to do idol worship is they said, we want to work the land. The Canaanites say to worship this God. It works for them. So we'll worship God and them. What's the harm to do both? And Eliyahu says, there's harm. You can't pick both. Pick one. Pick God or pick the prophets of the Baal. And then we know fire comes down from the sky, and it only takes the Korban of Eliyahu, and then Bnei Yisrael say, Adonai hu Elohim, and that's also something we say in Yom Kippur. I think when we know the context, it makes it so powerful. So it could be more amazing than going with your family to Hara Carmel, into National Park. It's gorgeous. You could see the Mediterranean Sea. Opening the Tanakh and reading the story. What a way to connect them with their identity, especially if we're talking about different religions. So I think it's a little bit ironic that the Baha'u'llah wants the administrative center to be by Hara Carmel, because specifically in Hara Carmel, the people have to pick one. They can't do everything. And the Baha'i religion is let's accept everything and everyone. So that's just an interesting point. No community in Israel. The people that work there, that manage the gardens, so they're volunteers, they're Bahai that come from all over the world. They work for a little while and then they're switched by other volunteers. Okay. Next point, did the state donate land to the Bahai gardens? How do they just have it? So it was purchased over time by the Baha'is from donations all around the world. And I also would like to mention that the Baha'i Gardens are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I think also the last Zoom I gave on Bet Sharim, it's also, and over 500,000 visitors a year. Israel is also a great place to have these gardens because the weather is amazing. Like there's really every single season the flowers grow. You would think, oh, what about when it snows? It doesn't really snow here so much. And also something hard to grasp when you live in America. When you think of plants in America, everything's dead and cold and brown, and winter in Israel, everything's growing and life is bursting. So it's really a great place for gardening. Okay, now I want to summarize and then I have an additional point that I want to add. So we spoke about a lot. No, not ready. Wait, okay, technical issue. 1 second, I want to just move the chat box. Wait. Okay, so we opened up looking at 2 photographs of the Baha'i Gardens. We said how peaceful and colorful and beautiful it is. Then we learned the backstory about the Bab who predicted that there's going to be someone that's going to bring a new message to humanity, and that was the Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah spent 40 years writing, then he's imprisoned in Aqab, but the religion grew afterwards. It was even growing then. People liked the message. In Israel, you can visit, and I highly recommend Haifa or to Akko. I actually like the ones in Akko better. It could be because those are the ones that I saw first, and sometimes I think like whatever you see first is in your head and you're more inclined to do that. But they're both worth it to see. The Baha'i faith, we said it's monotheistic. They say that all humanity is one. Our goal needs to be to overcome the barriers that divide us. Men and women are equal. There's no social hierarchy. They encourage marriage. Parents should raise the kids, make sure they have a profession and are educated in the trade. Worship of God, very simply done through meditation and through prayer. We also spoke about the devotional circles that they have. The gardens, why do all the temples have gardens? Because the Baha'i say that the gardens are a wonderful preparation to get to the temple or to get to the shrine, and it's an area to contemplate. And a lot of times, like in our own lives, if we think of we want to just go somewhere to think, we think of nature. So they make these perfect, beautiful gardens with all their symbolism, circles. We have here circumambulation and the number 9 that's holy to them. They put all those ideas into their gardens. We saw the Baha'i Temple in Illinois. If you're near Chicago, I think it's worth it to go and check it out, at least the outside, look at the gardens. And I Googled today because I wanted to see the story. So because of Corona, it's closed and you can only visit the gardens. Also something interesting, they had this tab on the website that said, become a Baha'i. So I clicked on it and it said that if someone is ready to profess that they accept the Baha'u'llah as the prophet of God, they could become a Baha'i and fill out a form and someone will contact you. And then it also said that if you have children under 15, they can automatically be registered as Baha'i. However, if they're over 15, they need to make their own decision because that's considered the age of reason for spirituality, religion. So that's just an interesting thing. Sign up here to become Baha'i. Their diet, they could eat anything, but alcohol and drugs are forbidden. 19-month calendar, 19 days in each month. The Baha'i in Israel, we said there is no community, but their administrative center where things are run is in Haifa, and their holiest area site where they face and where the Baha'u'llah is buried is in Akka, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Okay. Now, all of this, I think, is valuable, one, in just learning about another religion in the world, I'm more educated, and two, the gardens are beautiful, even if you didn't know who they belong to. But I think we could take this a step further. And the question I said, the higher question I wanted to ask was, how could learning about the Bahai strengthen our own way of life as Jewish people? So this is the quote I have here is from the writings of Harav Kook. I learned it this morning. I was reading with my husband. And what Harav Kook says is that Kol Yisrael, the whole nation of Israel, Neshama Achati, is one nation, is one neshama, one soul. And he says all the neshamot, all the souls are connected from the neshama hayoter elyona shebedor harishon, from the highest soul of the first generation until the last soul in the last generation. Everyone is connected. And when I heard this quote, I told David, I said, David, if I can't imagine how anyone could ever leave Judaism after learning something like this. It was so profound to me because I said it's just showing how we're all connected. And as a Jewish person, you're part of something so great. You're not this individual person living on an island. You're part of the whole Am Yisrael and the whole history. And there are a lot of similarities, I think, between Judaism and the Baha'i religion. But I think one of the main differences which struck me was that something that Judaism has is a sense of national history, and national identity, and national memory. And I think the holiday that we just passed that most clearly signifies that is Pesach, where we're talking about something that happened so long ago, telling our children that we left Egypt and to remember that. And I think for someone to grow up knowing that, and knowing that you're part of something so grand, and that all your neshamot are connected from the Avot all the way, Bnei Yisrael, and the Mitzrayim desert, Eress Yisrael till today, to be part of something so great, I think is amazing. Plus all the ideas of unity, and that's the good for the world, are in Judaism as well. And another question that I want to leave you with, that this question, I know I mentioned a lot in Zooms because I think it in a good way, it preoccupies me, that I'm always thinking about it, not only for future generations, but even about myself. I asked myself, how can I strengthen my own Jewish identity? And then I thought about the ways we already do it. And I think the fact that we send our children to Jewish schools, and here I found on Google a picture of a Chumash play, and the kids are learning from an early age who Abraham is and who the Avot are, and they're learning that you're a part of that. And as they grow up and we grow up, the more Torah that we learn and know that this is something passed down from generation to generation. I think the collective Masoret tradition is huge. And of course, one of my favorites, and the one that encourages all these Zooms, is this beautiful piece of land of Eress Yisrael. Because one, the fact that we're even connected to a land, the more we learn about it, the more our identity just grows. And I'm always learning more about Eress Yisrael, and my identity is always growing. And I think these are ways for ourselves that we can grow, and that we could encourage our children to grow. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure sharing with you, and I wish you an amazing day.
Thank you. Again, you taught me something that I never knew. It was really interesting. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining.
Now I have 2 places to go, the gardens in Haifa and in Akko. I love the painting in back of you. Did you do that?
Oh, thank you. So I think I'm going to put a sign because it's new in my house, and everyone that sees it asks who it is. My sister-in-law Malka, she's an amazing, amazing artist, and my whole entire house is decorated now with her paintings. So I'm going to send you a link to her work if you want to see more. It's really, really gorgeous.
Thank you. And it's great having you back again.
Thank you. You
too. Well.
That was great.
Thank you.
It's funny. All the Israel Instagram things that I follow are always pushing these Bahai gardens because they say, "Could you believe this is in Israel?" And I never knew, because it's magnificent, but I never knew what it was. I never dug in deep. So the fact they did that today is great, because now I finally know what it is.
I have on Instagram all the time because after we learn it, it's even people don't at least the community trips. I mean, we did make it up north, But if you stay in Jerusalem all the days, it's impossible to go there. It's just too far. But
Right.
it's the whole middle and north of the country. It's amazing. So,
You have to be committed. You have to be committed to stay up there and just spend 3 days and see everything.
Yeah, for sure. So, have a great day, Ralph.
Take care.
Bye.